Precisely 26 years ago, when the Iraqi soldiers entered Kuwait, a story started to surface about the premature Kuwaiti babies taken out of the incubators and being left to die. This news quickly spread in the American media, and this claim was supported by a study conducted by the Amnesty International. This was further supported by an account of a teenage girl known as Nayara. Her story quickly circulated on every news channel in the United States, later utilized by the Bush government to illustrate why the United States must interfere in the foreign dispute. However, it was later revealed that Nayara al-Sabah was the daughter of Saud Nasir al-Saad al-Sabah, a Kuwaiti ambassador, and the story about the babies being taken from the incubator had been constructed as a part of a public relations strategy, financed by the Kuwaiti authorities and published by the CIA and the American media.
Fast forward again to August 2nd, 1990. Iraq attacks Kuwait, claiming the Kuwaitis are slant drilling into Iraq's oil fields. U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush pushes for a land war against Iraq. But polls show the U.S. public is split 50-50 on that idea. Then comes this eyewitness testimony before a congressional committee from a 15-year-old Kuwaiti girl. The claim is she cannot be identified for fear of reprisals.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
The U.S. public is outraged. The result? Support for land war zooms. It's a turning point. Desert Storm is launched. 135,000 Iraqis are killed. An estimated 1 million Iraqis, many of them children and old people, then die as a result of 10 years of sanctions. One small problem. There never were any incubator baby deaths, not one. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's investigative flagship program, The Fifth Estate, reveals the girl to be the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, given her lines and coached in acting by the giant American PR firm Hill & Knowlton. It's one phase in a $10 million joint U.S.-Kuwaiti campaign of deception. This man is lying.
I myself buried 14 newborn babies that had been taken from their incubators.
This man is lying.
And they had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
There were a lot of people who participated in a conspiracy. Yes, an out-and-out conspiracy of fake organizations, false documents, fraud, and disinformation.
In 2013, the United Nations Carta del Ponte also said that evidence suggested rebels had used sarin nerve gas. As journalist Seymour Hersh reported in December 2013, intelligence officials told him that the entire narrative was a ruse and that the attack was not the result of the current regime. Hersh also revealed how the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was instrumental in approving the transportation of Libyan chemical weapon stockpiles to be handed to jihadist rebels in Syria. The Obama administration's intervention in Syria led directly to the refugee crisis and the rise of ISIS.
During our investigation for crimes against humanity and war crimes, we collect some witness testimony that made to appear that some chemical weapons were used, in particular nervine gas. And what appeared on to our investigation that was used by the opponents, by the rebels, and we have no indication at all that the government, the authority of the Syria government had used chemical weapons. Of course, now the special commission that the Secretary General put in place will investigate and tell us what it is exactly. But I was a little bit stupefied that the first indication we got they were about the use of nerve gas by the opponent.
Flashing back to 2013, the intelligence findings were based on phone calls intercepted by a German surveillance ship operated by the BND, which is the same as the CIA in Germany, the German intelligence service. It deployed off the Syrian coast. Bild Sonntag said the intercepted communications suggested Assad, who was accused of war crimes by the West, was not himself involved in last month's attack. So has William Hague, a diplomat in Parliament of the UK. He has also criticized the UK government of being involved with the deep state of the United States in arming and assisting ISIS in the attacks in Syria to overthrow Assad's government. In last month's attack or in other instances when government forces have allegedly accused chemical weapons being used by Assad. Reported by The Guardian in 2013, Assad did not order Syria chemical weapons attack, says German press. The intelligence findings were based on phone calls intercepted by a German surveillance ship operated by the BND. But Obama is facing stiff resistance from Democrats and Republicans in the House of Republicans who fear involvement in another Middle East war. So in other words, Obama did not get support by the Congress, nor did he get support by his own party and Republicans in the House. And yet we still went into Syria and supported rebel forces which were actually ISIS forces and armed and funded them, allowing also George Soros to also provide assistance in the coup. In September 18, 2013, the White House wrote on their blog, the United Nations releases report on the use of chemical weapons in Syria. In the summary, they state that on Monday, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon briefed members of the Security Council on the report of the United Nations mission to investigate allegations of the use of chemical weapons in Syria. The report concludes unequivocally that chemical weapons were used on a relatively large scale in Ghouta area of Damascus on 21st August 2013, causing numerous casualties, particularly among civilians. But they do not say who released those chemical weapons. While the United States will continue analyzing the UN's findings carefully, a preliminary review makes clear that only the regime could have carried out this large-scale chemical weapons attack. So in other words, it's an opinion, and they're assuming based on these findings. The Washington blog states, indeed, several crucial details confirm the regime's guilt. The United States has associated one of the munitions identified in the UN report, a 122mm improvised rockets, with previous Assad regime attacks. We have reviewed thousands of open source videos related to the current conflict in Syria, but have not observed the opposition not manufacturing or using this style of rocket. In other words, they are confirming that Assad has used in the past 122mm improvised rockets, but based on that, they're saying that the rockets came directly from Assad's regime. They're also going by YouTube videos that were posted online on social media directly from the rebels themselves. In this 2016 August article by The Guardian, highlighted Syrian regime and ISIS carried out chemical attacks, says UN investigators. So obviously it took almost 3 years for the UN to get an actual conclusion on the chemical attacks. In the meantime, Obama without congressional approval, began to arm rebels in the region, ISIS and rebels, same thing, as well as deploy assistance to block Russian airplanes and Syrian government airplanes and Air Force to be able to create strongholds for these rebels, ISIS, to surround Syria. Most of these fighters were coming out of Iraq, as we were also eliminating our own forces out of Iraq as ISIS grew stronger and began training more and more militants in Iraq, then deploying them over to Syria to be armed by Obama and his administration, and Hillary Clinton. As stated down here in the middle of the article, in September 2013, Syria accepted a Russian proposal to relinquish its chemical weapons stockpile. Russia, a close ally of Syria, has blocked sanctions, as I stated before. We move on here to where it claims the information suggests the involvement of both the government of the Syrian Arab Republic and other actions in these alleged incidents, the team's report said. So in other words, none of these findings by the United Nations were confirmed as conclusive. Actually, 3 of the findings were definitely inconclusive. The rest of them, there was no actual proof that anything came out of the Syrian government. But Obama continued to arm rebels, arm ISIS, and destabilize the region without congressional approval. Fast forwarding to 2016, Russia, a close ally of Syria, has blocked sanctions and other council action against Assad's government. But Moscow supported the establishment of the UN UPCW investigation of the Assad government. The U.S. National Security Council spokesman Ned Price said the U.S. would seek accountability at the UN and place a high priority on targeting ISIS chemical weapons capabilities. The UN Security Council established a joint UN OPCW investigation team a year ago to identify those responsible for the chemical attacks in Syria, and it examined in 9 cases in 7 towns where chemical weapons were believed to have been used. It determined responsibility in 3 cases and said evidence in 3 others pointed to government responsibility, but it was not conclusive. It said its findings in 3 other cases were inconclusive. In September 2013, Syria accepted a Russian proposal to relinquish its chemical weapons stockpile, which averted a U.S. military strike in response to an alleged chemical weapons attack that had killed hundreds in Damascus suburb in Ghouta the previous month. Besides all the disinformation by Obama's deep state administration that led the United States into supporting, arming, and paving the way for ISIS into Syria's borders, it is also interesting to note the large amount of cover Obama himself received by the mainstream media by ignoring Obama's and Hillary's war agenda throughout the Middle East. Instead, today we have the complete opposite occurring, with the same media, entertainers, and politicians pushing President Trump into conflict with Russia and Syria by constantly claiming he's a Russian agent, to the point where it makes it difficult for the president to even dare make a conscious and critical decision that would be in the best interest for our country and the rest of the world.